Of course, you asked the hardest question is the last question. Come on.
But you're thinking of building a company or already run a company that is not registered, but you want to get registered. I've looked at a lot of solutions, and one of the best ones in the market right now is Doula. I reached out to Arjun, who is actually the founder of Doula.com. I asked him if he'd like to work together on the podcast. He was like, of course. Doula is sort of a platform that helps founders and businesses form and manage US companies regardless of where they live. If someone is living in India, for example, and wants to start a company and get it registered in the US, he or she can do it by using Doula.com. Doula helps in forming the company. It can be an LLC, C Corp, or you name it. Doula offers a US address and a bank account to users, which can allow you to conduct business transactions that you can receive and send payments no matter where you live in the world from the United States. And other than that, they also provide tax consultation to the users, which is an incredible feature. And Doula simplifies the process of establishing and managing a US company, and especially for founders that are not in the US. And regardless of where they live, you can get your company registered with Doula.com. To check out Doula, go to doula.com/exerton. That is DOOLA.com/EXERTON. Hey Kevin, how are you? Hope you're doing well.
Thank you. Yes. Great to meet you, Advik. Pleasure to be on the show.
Yeah, for sure. I've been eyeing this in for years now, I'd say at this point, and I'm so glad we got the chance to do this. But before we get into the stuff that we have planned out, let's start with who's Kevin. Who are you?
Great. Well, again, I'm been primarily on the company building side, and more recently I've moved to the formal investing side. But who is Kevin? I've started a number of different companies. Started a money remittance business called Zoom, XOOM, and a ticketing business called Eventbrite. Both those businesses went public. When Zoom went public in 2013, the business operated for a couple of years in the public markets and then was acquired by PayPal for just over $1 billion. Eventbrite is still an independent company, and my wife Julia and co-founder runs that to this day. And it was a lot of fun starting that business with her. I have a venture fund now. We've just activated our second fund. It's a $300 million fund, primarily focused at the seed stage, but we do some growth deals as well. I would say, I enjoy the seed stage the most. It's where the company is just getting started. It's the founding seeds of the business.
There's no better intro. Also, you have made some incredible angel investments too. PayPal, Uber, Airbnb, if I'm not wrong, Lookout, and everything in between. But
Standard, Ramp, many others.
I mean, I'm curious. Before we get into the other stuff, this has been bugging me for a while now, for the lack of a better word. But after, so when you invested in PayPal, that was early. When you met Peter Thiel near the cafe at across Stanford.
Yep. Country Market, yeah, or Town and Country Center, shopping center across the street from Stanford University. Yeah. But I knew Peter from university days. He had quite a reputation. He was just one of the brightest people, and kind of had an alternative mindset towards a lot of things that was refreshing.
How do you think did that change the way you invest in companies? Meeting Peter.
Well, it's funny because he is like almost you kind of think, what would Peter do? I did work at Founders Fund between Eventbrite and starting A-Star, and in that mode of scrutiny, really thinking through, is this founder or founders the right people, and is this market right? It's looking at things in kind of a new dimension and new quality, and it's not getting swept up in what's popular or what is so-called hot at the time, but it's really a new or alternative perspective to look at things.
How do you really develop that perspective? Because I a lot of times when people try to do that, I mean, I try to do that.
Mm-hmm.
You tend to get caught up in the things that are quote unquote hot in that particular time. Like right now, AI, I'd say a little bit. So how
Mm-hmm.
do you differentiate yourself from that?
Yeah, I mean it's a challenge because without a doubt you want to move towards and you want to work with the brightest founders out there. And to be honest, a lot of the brightest founders are in AI. So being purely contrarian maybe isn't just um, always. I think wherever you see such great talent, you want to back and support that great talent. It mainly means just that oftentimes the biggest new companies and so on kind of come out of ways that we don't fully appreciate at first, or they come out in alternative ways. But certainly, I think that what's exciting about technology today is that it's not just AI, that it's crypto, it's industrial biotech, it's robotics, it's so many other fields that are available right now. Um, and so kind of looking for those very passionate founders that have a thesis and are kind of slaving away, like grinding away in obscurity and building something, is always that reminder to be out there on the lookout for.
How do you know if a founder is really passionate about something or just like riding the wave, sort of? If you take AI as an example too.
Um, yeah, that's a good question because I think there's so much resources for founders to kind of train or to learn about that you can almost mimic. Uh, you can mimic what one should do, and so I think you have like this extra added challenge of trying to kind of see through that. I mean, I think everyone earnestly wants to build something great and have a big impact. I think not many will be able to successfully pull it off and overcome like the many challenges and obstacles. And and you're usually talking about somebody in their 20s, and you're kind of making a bet. It's almost like you're almost like A&R person who was in the like olden days of music, of how do you find the Beatles, like how do you find the talented band and sign them up with a record deal. In some regards, that's what venture is today. You're looking for those great founders that are going to go on and be these proverbial rock stars of tomorrow. The Steve Jobs, the Mark Zuckerbergs, the Brian Nathan Joes of Airbnb, the Ben Silvermans of Pinterest, the Peter Thiels and beyond, the Elon Musk, of course.
I mean, but like if I go back to the same exact point uh, of people riding the hype versus people really wanting to build something, build something big, what do you think comes out different between like Peter Thiel? PayPal was started around the when the internet started to become big. So
Mm-hmm.
how could people tell whether Peter Thiel was really he wanted to solve payments versus he was just there because it was exciting and cool?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I think like he was there because it was exciting, and he knew it was important. Um, if he was truly impassioned, he would have kept building, but he sold very early on in that. I remember at their the day after they had signed the agreement, talking to him, and saying like, you could have been like, you're just in the early innings of this business. There is so much to be done. And he said something to the effect that he didn't want to be a software executive. He had other things on his mind. Maybe that was a way station, or that was a collection point for a lot of talent, and that was maybe the importance of that group coming together, of like the PayPal team, as they all went on to do great things. But yeah, I certainly, it was right in front of my face and many others when Elon went and started the rocket company, and we thought it was just a hobby. And that is an example of someone extraordinary doing something non-obvious and contrarian in plain sight, and almost nobody would back him until finally Peter did, and then Steve Jurvetson did when he was at Draper Fisher. I think those were the first two investors.
I had Tim Draper on in August, I think. So I think, but after that, Steve started Future. But like, I'll not stick to the schedule here. I mean, the heck with the schedule. But I'll go back to the software. Peter Thiel not wanting to become a software executive part. Peter is, from what I've gathered, I've been a pretty big fan of Peter since I was like 10 or 11, I think. And from what I've gathered, is he's exceptionally smart. And so, how do you think he did not want to become a software executive? How far do you think do smart folks like Peter Thiel and Elon Musk have it all planned out?
Yeah, very well planned out. I would say that, Peter, that comment is that, he has so many more interests and passions, that it would feel like, I interpreted that to mean that it would feel like, a very narrow role to be in, kind of this, in building a software business his whole career, even though that's what Bill Gates did. Peter invests, he builds companies, he's kind of multifaceted. He's a philosopher, he's a thinker, sometimes a theologian even. And so, I think he's a little bit of a unique case. And there's a lot of smart people. I went to university and went to graduate school with a lot of brilliant people, but there's smart, and then there's a level of like sophistication that an Alon or Peter have above those that can just get perfect scores on their standardized test or their A levels or whatever else. Maybe it's the perspective of how one sees the world, but it's more than just raw intelligence.
Do you think, is that natural, or does that get developed over time, like in Peter and Elon, for example?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think it's naturally there. I think it has to be developed. I think part of, people, like, I think part of it is that there's a wanting to, like, a self-improvement, like always learning. I loved university and grad school. I love to learn and improve myself. And I think with a Peter or Elon, that's like in some manner of overdrive.
What was the biggest thing you learned from him?
Oh gosh, so many things. I mean, it's there were just always these little key insights that he would say that would kind of ring true over time. One thing that I had a friend give me a hard time about, but he used to say, outsource your non-core competencies, and that sounds kind of, that's a kind of funny expression, but it basically means like, look, there's only so much time you're kind of here on the earth, and you want to focus on the things that you can do best. And so if there are things that others could do better, why spend time on that? And that kind of applied to, I think he had mentioned that at the time that like after the acquisition by PayPal, and yeah, after the eBay acquisition of PayPal, and he moved into the Four Seasons Hotel, and had a penthouse suite with, the butlers and laundry, and so he could just think, and he could do all these and play chess, and be with friends and colleagues rather than doing laundry, and that's effectively what he meant by outsourcing your non-core competencies. He took it to a whole different level, I would say.
How have you outsourced your non-core competencies at Eventbrite, at Zoom, when you
Well,
do?
it's funny because it's kind of a universal philosophy. Like, a company shouldn't try to do all the things that other companies can do just fine. It should really focus on what it does best and what it does uniquely. And if it doesn't have something it does uniquely, then it's a commodity, and it really shouldn't be in the market. So like it is a like kind of like broad philosophy that at Eventbrite we were very good at stopping event like certain types of event fraud that would overrun other platforms, or we would um, we had all these unique mechanisms that made Eventbrite unique and different from anything else. Or same with Zoom, the money remittance business.
How do you think that how your understanding of the topic developed from working with Peter to now Eventbrite?
Well, I mean, I kind of think of advice is kind of like an open source. Building companies is in a sense a kind of open source endeavor where you're looking for the best advice to use. You don't need to use every package, and every line of code or every bit of advice, but you find things that like bits and pieces that work well for you, and apply it, and build and sculpt your company, sculpt your business in that manner. And so, I always liked finding really great advisors or others, investors that could give insights. Both companies, we had the good fortune to be backed um, by Sequoia Capital,
Probably both.
in
Yeah.
both cases, and talk about great wisdom and insights. The just having that sort of star chamber of great mentors to turn to is incredibly helpful. And I think that there's a lot of capital out in the markets today. You have maybe less hands-on. Like, valuations have risen. Investors are generally less hands-on, and so you're kind of a ship at sea on your own to solve to solve a lot of the problems. But I always found it so useful to have others, advisors, to bounce things off, to go to with the biggest problems.
But like you have built a ton of great things in the past from Zoom to Eventbrite, so you have access sort of to the people that could give you a lot of advice, like Roloff, like basically like Peter, you name it. But for young founders and people who are like just starting out,
Mm-hmm.
for them there is a barrage of advice out there that from different people, most of which is nuanced in very nuanced in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think should they take or consider advice
Mm-hmm.
that is sort of out there in the market?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. It's important. I think that you like, founders will just tend to migrate towards those that they click with, or that that advice really resonates. And in my case, though, I had to start somewhere. Like, I remember going after, there was this executive CFO, the original CFO at Netflix, Barry McCarthy, who had done some of the first cohort analysis, and the company had gone public. Netflix had gone public very early on, and so you saw a lot of the numbers that they were insightful and useful to me. And I would just reach out and try to meet with them. And I and yeah, he's become a friend and have known him for years since then. He went on to then be CFO of Spotify, and then more recently was CEO of Peloton. And so I think like um, others want to, those that have been building do want to kind of pay it forward and help others. And it's a great opportunity to define which bits and pieces apply. And it sounds a little peculiar that we would think Netflix would match money remittance, but money remittance, for consumer money remittance, you send money on the 1st and the 14th, basically on paydays, twice a month, with like almost with such a repetitive rate. It's almost like a subscription product. And so I naturally like turned towards Netflix, as at the time was like, still pretty much is the king of all subscription, just subscription ninjas, you would say.
What made you think that he was the best person for you to take advice from?
Well, I think that as like a founder will just find things resonate. Like there'll be a rapport that makes sense, and it just gels. And so I can't say more than that. And the other side is that there's such a body of work that's published online. Like I could see the quarterly reports, I could see all the work that Barry and the team were doing when they were, and it was kind of what I was looking for. So there's a lot of indications that way.
Why do you think did he advise you?
I was probably persistent. It took a little while. It was like a slow speed chase, but I think I was persistent.
I mean, if someone wants advice from you, what should they do in order to get advice?
I think like there's like maybe an intelligent way to approach, or maybe you always don't think of it as a one-way street. What are other ways that one could be helpful? But I think like intelligently posing a problem, like, people want to get involved with other founders and other startups because they see opportunity there and they see growth, and you want to be at the ground floor of the next, PayPal or Airbnb or Anduril or whatever else. And so that's really the sense you're trying to build there.
The one last question that I'd like to end with. I've been into startups, VCs, and like all these things since I was like 11. What do you think is one fact that will blow 11-year-old me mind?
One fact now. Oh gosh, that's a really good question.
Yeah.
Of course, you asked the hardest question as the last question. Come on. You've stumped me. What have other guests said?
I've heard peculiar. This is the most open-ended question I asked. So I've heard things like pineapples are pineapple or what, very blueberries are vegetables or something like that, to life advice. So everything under the sun. I've heard a lot of different answers.
Well, I'll just leave things with more, just like a general worldly advice is just persistence. Having been through a few cycles of technology, like the biggest error is always when one gives up and walks away, and kind of fighting through things and persisting, through the up cycles are easier, but through the down cycles, that's the most critical piece. So Thank you. It was really a pleasure to be here.
That blew 15-year-old me mind, but yeah. I mean, this is incredible. Thank you so much for taking the time out for this. There was a bit of an issue in the start, but I'm glad it got
You
resolved.
got it.
And I think that's it from my side. Anything you'd like to say?
Uh, Thanks so much, and good luck to all your listeners.